like to bring this meeting to order of the Geneva Historic Preservation Commission for Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. If you'll call the roll.
Hartman. Here. McManus. Here. Solomon. Here. Stason.
Here.
Jensen. Here. Zinke.
Here.
And Zelmer.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. The first item is the approval of meeting minutes of October 19th, 2021. Does anyone have any comments about the meeting? Or the meeting minutes from last month? Having none, can I get a motion to approve the meeting minutes as presented? And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, 2 abstains and motion passes. Great. The next item on our agenda is a 5-minute field guide. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman Zellner. There we go. A roof is simply the upper covering of a building, correct? Because roofs come in all shapes, configurations, and materials, seasoned architects and preservationists struggle daily with finding the correct terminology to describe particular roof forms and features. That's why we have published field guides to identify style and components, architectural dictionaries to look up terms, and colleagues that we can question. To complicate matters, many architectural terms have slightly different meanings and/or pronunciations across different regions of the country. Tonight's 5-minute field guide takes us up on the roof for a quick look at some of the most common roof terminology. Oh, and just a note before I begin, 5 local examples appear in tonight's presentation. See how well you know the roofs of your Geneva buildings. The gable is the most basic and common roof form. It's simply a pitched or sloped roof with 2 inclined planes, typically of the same pitch, meeting at a peak in the center and which terminate at a triangular end wall, which is the gable, from where the name gable roof comes from. There are 2 primary variations of the gable roof. There is the side gable, which is a gabled roof building with the main entrance below the eaves of one of the sloping planes of the roof. So again, in a side gable, you don't see the triangular wall. A front gable is a gable roof building with the main entrance in the gable end that faces the primary access route. Another version of the gabled roof is the gabled L, a gabled roof building with 2 opposing gable roofs at right angles to one another that form an L-shaped floor plan. The ridges are at the same height or nearly the same height. A variation of the gable is the cross gable, which has 2 gable roofs that intersect at right angles to each other. It's most commonly noted in church architecture, where there is a traditional nave and transept in the church, as seen in the lower right image of a church roof. Jerkin head is a term we looked at last month, so it should be familiar to you. It's a gable end of a roof that slopes backwards towards the top to form a small hipped roof end. It's also known in some regions as a hipped gable and is associated most often with the Queen Anne, Tudor Revival, and Craftsman architecture. Gambrel or gambrel roof is characterized by a pair of shallow pitch slopes above steeply pitched slopes on each side of a central ridge. The steeply pitched slopes typically conceal a second or third floor habitable space. This type of roof is also known as a Dutch roof. The Gothic arch is most often seen in early 20th century barns. It's a roof formed by a series of pointed arch trusses in which each side is formed by a segment of a circle with its center on the spring line. The form of the arch may be either an equilateral arch or an acute point arch, which greatly alters the shape of the arch itself. One of the advantages of Gothic arch buildings is, as you can see in the far right image, it creates a large space that's unencumbered by columns or posts. A hipped roof is a roof that pitches inward from all exterior walls, resulting in a ridge that is shorter than the length of the building itself. A variation is the pyramidal or pyramidal roof, which is a hipped roof at which all of the planes meet at the center to form a peak, forming a pyramid. This is typically found in smaller buildings, whether they be residences, garages, or utility buildings. Another variation of the hipped roof is the truncated hip. A truncated hipped roof has sloped sides and a flat center section at the top plane, which can be used as a terrace and may incorporate a flat surface. The flat surface is typically not visible from the ground level. However, in some examples, such as on the left, a decorative trim may be put at the flat area to further accentuate the roof peak. And in the example shown at the right, this is sometimes misappropriated as a mansard roof, but it's really a truncated hip. Because a mansard roof is a roof that has steeply sloped planes that cover habitable space, and then has a lower pitched roof above that. The name comes from the French architect Francois Mansart, who was alive between 1598 and 1666. Mansard roofs may have straight slopes, or they may be a bell-cast form, which is an outward curve, or a concave form, which is an inward curve. Turrets come in all different shapes and configurations, but they are in general an ornamental structure placed at the apex of a large tower. They may be open or enclosed, and as I said, constructed in a variety of shapes and sizes. They can be ranging from a conical version on the left to segmental in the next image, a bell-cast dome on the third image, and the fourth image is a rectangular tower roof. Arched or bowed roofs. These are a curved roof surface, typically supported by bowstring trusses that combine a curved top member known as a chord and a lower horizontal member also known as a chord. The two chords are connected with vertical and diagonal ties that give strength to the roof system. The advantage of a bowstring truss is that it again provides clear floor space in a large area. Taking the idea of the bowstring truss a little further was the Quonset hut, which was first manufactured in 1941 when the United States Navy needed an all-purpose lightweight building that could be shipped anywhere and assembled without any skilled labor. The George A. Fuller Construction Company manufactured them, and the first one was produced within 60 days of signing the contract with the United States Navy. They were fabricated of corrugated steel with plywood end walls. Quonset huts were developed for military housing, office space, warehousing, and vehicle storage. Following the war, Quonset huts were favored for industrial and agricultural use. A segmental vault. That is a partial arc or a vault with a cross-section in the form of a segmental arch. This is most often seen in contemporary architecture, as the three examples illustrate here. A shed roof, or shed slope, is a roof with a single slope with supporting rafters spanning from one outside wall to the opposite outside wall of a building. Again, typically found in mid-century modern and contemporary buildings. However, it's also used quite often in commercial buildings. However, in those buildings where they are typically very long or deep from the street, The rafters sometimes run parallel with the slope and are connected from the outside wall to intermediate beams until the end of the building is reached. Flat roofs is a roof with a walkable plane that is either horizontal or only minimally pitched to eliminate ponding and drainage to either a roof edge or to centralized drains. Again, this was popularized in mid-century modern and continues through contemporary architecture. Parapet. That is a term for a low wall along a roof edge. It comes in a variety of forms. On the far left, you can see what's called a stepped parapet, which is typically associated with Flemish architecture and is a decorative end to a gable wall and encloses the roof plane itself. It can be as simple as a small short curb, as shown in the middle example, circled in red, or as in the Kane County Courthouse, it can be a series of piers and balustrades that provide a protective wall around the roof. Another term is cupola or lantern. These are small structures with windows or lights that illuminate the space below or provides a vantage point for looking outward. When glazed, a cupola may be called a lantern. If louvered for air movement, it is often called a ventilator. Large cupolas may be identified as a monitor or a belvedere, the latter in the Italianate style. So again, you can see they take a variety of shapes and based on their function, different types of enclosure. Cricket or saddle. These are very minor roof elements, but very important roof elements that direct water away from vertical or opposing slopes of a roof. So on the left, you can see a triangular element up against a chimney that diverts water from away from the chimney. And in the right image, you can see where several roof planes are sloping together, and so a large flat plane has been placed between them to divert the water so it doesn't collect in the deepest part of the intersection of those planes. Dormers come in a large variety of types. They are small structures that project from a sloping roof and contain a window in the downslope end. The function of them is to provide light into an attic or habitable space and to provide additional headroom in those spaces. A variety of types include a gable dormer, a pedimented dormer, which looks very similar to a gable dormer except that it has a formal triangular closure and may have some classical elements as window trim as shown in the middle view. A hipped dormer, a dormer called a wall dormer, which extends from the lower wall through the roof plane itself. A shed dormer, which just like a shed roof is a single slope. An arch-top dormer, which has, again, a curving or arched roof to the dormer itself. And then there are specialty shapes. There's round or oval dormers, an eyebrow dormer, and then shaped dormers, which can be in a variety of different configurations depending on the architecture they're attached to. So, very rarely, or not infrequently, these roof types are combined into several different roofs into a single building or property. So historically, you can see some examples of how different roofs and different roof types are merged to create architecture. Typically, the compound or composite roofs were popularized in the late 19th century and reached a height with the development of the Queen Anne and associated revival styles. But it did continue into the 20th century in more restrained versions and simplified combinations. The more complicated the roof is to build, the more complicated it is for preservationists to describe. And a century later, from that Queen Anne era, roofs continued to get increasingly complex in contemporary architecture. And these are several examples of some pretty elaborate examples that incorporate many of the types of roofs and roof elements that were included in tonight's presentation. So that concludes the 5 minutes field guide. I hope that you found all 5 Geneva examples while you were watching that. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them at this point. Oh,
Campbell made it to the list, I'm so glad. Okay,
Chairman Zelmer likes gambrel roofs.
yes. Okay. With that, we will go on to our next item of business, which is review of a conceptual design development plans, and it's 116 Campbell Street.
So, Commissioners, just as a way of review, this is a project that came before us last month as a permit application, and there were some questions raised by the Commission about the original proposal. The applicants did withdraw the application and did meet with me at the request of the Historic Preservation Commission's comments. The property is located in the southeast corner of the Geneva Historic District and is located in the eastern half of the Central Geneva Historic District listed in the National Register of Historic Places. Just briefly, the house is known as the Emma Swarthout House. It's a colonial revival Dutch colonial building built in 1923 for Emma Rice Swarthout and her daughter. And eventually her daughters all lived in the house till near their deaths in the 1970s, the last of them. The house is characterized by a concrete foundation, clapboard siding that has been covered with aluminum siding, shingle siding at the second floor that has also been covered with synthetic siding. It originally had 3/1 double hung wood windows that have been replaced with vinyl windows by a previous owner. It has an incised recessed porch that has been enclosed by a previous owner. And it's a straight plain gambrel roof with full width dormers, shed roof dormers, and a brick chimney at the rear of the house. So tonight, and I will let the applicants come forward. They have come forward with 2 concepts that they're seeking some feedback from the commission. Again, a concept review is provided to allow the applicant and the commission to exchange ideas and reflect on the positives or any negatives that may be in a proposal, so that they can move forward with refining a plan and coming back with a permit drawing. So just before I turn over the lectern to the applicants, I have included a key plan for those of you who find plans helpful. And just to identify, it's always in the lower right-hand corner. The light blue area is the historic recessed porch that's been enclosed. The darker blue area is the proposed new porch, front porch. And the green area on the drawing is a proposed raised landscape bed. So with that, I would turn it over to the applicants, and I have them in all of the same concept in order, so I can move forward as you're ready to move forward.
Excellent. All right, well, thank you for having us back this month. We're excited to be here. We have 2 options. We looked at some other ones, but these were the 2 best ones we think we came up with. We took the feedback from the commission about not impeding upon the dormer. So what we did was on option A, we have a shed roof. So it's exciting that Michael presented roofs tonight, so we won't talk too much about it. But we looked at 2 options, and one was a shed roof and one was a flat roof. So on the shed roof, on both of these, we'd be overlaying onto the roof, so we would only probably going up to that dormer just a little bit for some flashing and whatnot. But we looked at those 2 options, so we kept it open, same kind of footprint, but what we did was we did slide it to the right yard 3 feet. So we took the feedback about not going the whole length of the house. So we took that into consideration, and we just went, we have 6 foot on our easement, so we went 3. And then one of the other common things, see, these are common things we did on both options, is we did raised planter beds. And so that would hide our structure behind, and then also allow us to not have to use any kind of railing or anything to impede upon that view that Jeremy and Melinda are looking for. So we'll be plus minus 12 inches off of finished floor. And then, so if you want to show option B. Oh, okay. So what we did was we just tried to do some quick study models, kind of similar to what we sent before. But we just wanted to show the front view and then two kind of side views looking down Campbell from both ways. And then here's option B. We came up with a flat roof. We kind of came up with just a little design up there to, kind of jazz up the flat roof. So it just isn't just kind of just a generic flat roof there. And as we learned tonight, no flat roof is truly flat. But as I mentioned, the only two differences are actually the roofs. So the footprint stays the same on both of them, same kind of concept that we looked at, not going across the whole house and going over 3 feet, and then doing some planter beds to hide our structure and make it more presentable.
And just for everybody's edification, if anybody needs to refer to last month's drawings as a back and forth, I do have those available, but I'm not going to go through them unless somebody needs them for reference, either you or the commission.
We welcome any feedback.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming back, and your wife is not here, so I assume that you're,
Yeah, she is at home with our little one.
Very
So,
good.
Very, very brand new. We had a couple-week hospital stay. It was pretty eventful, so everybody's pretty worn out. So I'm flying solo tonight. So, but she sends her regards.
very good, thank you. Congratulations on your,
Thank you. She was born on the 30th of October. So we had a little bit of a stay after that, but we've been home for about a week now. So we did. And she is a little pumpkin for sure.
very good. Okay, do you want to start, Carolyn? Well, thank you for coming back. I really do appreciate it, and I think just as just an overview, I think that both of these kind of hit the points that we had talked about. So I think that it is, with that, I'll let the commission give their feedback to. Carolyn, you want to start?
Sure. Since I've been called. Okay, I too am very appreciative that you come back. I love the fact that you had. I'm very appreciative that you came back. I like the fact that you decided not to put the porch across the entire front. And this partial porch, in my opinion, seems to fit the house better than the other ones that you had talked about. I find it interesting myself about the planter beds. Did you decide to do that so there wouldn't be any railing? Is that what you're doing?
It's twofold. It was to reduce, not have to do the railing per code, and then to also hide our structure. As we kind of saw in the last iteration, we were looking to do it on piers and kind of build like a traditional deck, so that we'd still want to do that for this revision. So we just thought that this would be a cleaner way to kind of clean it up and allow them to still kind of have that view that they talked about last month, where they can sit there and enjoy that and then converse with the community.
Oh, okay.
As a clarification, for those of you who are not architects or deal with the code, for residential applications to this, you can have a difference between the porch walking surface and the grade of 15 inches maximum. And so that's what they're trying to do is get to that distance. They don't have to put the railings.
So we were kind of looking at same structure as before, which would be 11 1/4 joist, so 2 by 12s. So that would be about our difference. It'd be right about 12 inches once you put flooring on it.
I see. Okay. All right. I had a question that I wanted to ask. with the porch ceiling, how are you attaching the porch ceiling to the existing house?
So we didn't get into it too deep yet, but the idea would be to kind of slide into the existing house. And the thought would be, if for some reason Jeremy and Melinda left for some reason and someone wanted to restore this back to the historical significance, they could pull it off and do some minor repairs, and it would be back to kind of what it was
I see. Okay,
as today.
I see. So when you say slide it,
Rip it off.
okay, so you're expecting to open up a portion of the house?
Correct.
And slide the roof up into the house and
Yes.
support it in that fashion?
Correct. Yeah, everything, once we get into the construction documents, everything would be to code.
I see.
And proper attachment and everything that's required by the city. The idea was that we took the feedback of not impeding upon the dormer, and that we are making minimum impact to the house. So that if someone did decide to come back and take it apart, they could and do some minor repairs, and it'd be restored to today's state.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Do you have an opinion of option 1 versus option 2?
I prefer option A to option B myself. I think option A is a cleaner look. The house is it is architecturally simple, and I think the roof line on option A is part of that simplicity. So I myself like A better.
Sure. Well, thank you for coming back. I know that the last meeting was a little bit confusing. There's a lot of information, but you really put a lot of effort and time into this new design and took all of the suggestions to heart. So that's very, very much appreciated. I really like what you came up with, and I think you're being very respectful to the history of the home and the historical area, and you're following the standards, and you looked at all of them very carefully. So thank you for doing that. I think the design is wonderful, and it fits the neighborhood, it fits the house, it fits the history. You're mindful of if you did leave the area and somebody wanted to remove the porch, that they could with very little impact. So thank you for taking the time to do all of that and being considerate of the historical value of your home. I really like option A as well, because I think it has a little bit more of a simple appearance, and it kind of fits into that style of the house. But either one of them I think are great, so thank you for doing that.
George? George?
Number one, my apologies for not being at the last meeting, but it was circumstances beyond my control. One, I would really like to compliment you on the wonderful illustration of the concept. Rarely do we get something that is so descriptive and leaves very little verbal interpretation, because the drawings speak for themselves. But a question, and it's already kind of been introduced about which option is favored, but I guess rather than us picking, I would be very interested. You proposed 2 options. Which one do you like?
Well, that was part of it, was we actually really liked both of them. And that was why we brought 2, because
Right.
we wanted your feedback, because we didn't want to pick one of them and you guys would have loved the other one, but you didn't like the one
Right.
you picked. So
But,
we just kind of wanted to hedge our
Well,
bets a little bit.
there is I wouldn't say significant difference, but there is a difference, and so you don't really have a favorite?
I mean, I think my wife and I would be really happy with either one.
Okay.
I think we want the space and the porch, and I think the roof line is less of a concern to us as far as like, I think we appreciate both and could be happy with either. So I don't want to sound wishy-washy because
Right.
we absolutely will make a decision, but that was some of the feedback we wanted to get, was we didn't want to bring something to the table that turned
Okay.
you guys off, so.
Yeah, the shingles would match on the A option. Is it the intent that the shingles would match the existing roof? I too favor A, and actually, architecturally, I think it tremendously helps the elevation from what it was. It adds another dimension to it, and truncating it, before, so it doesn't run along the entire length, I think is well-founded, and I love A. As soon as I saw it, I said, all around, I not only didn't I have any objections, I think overall it really helps the end project.
Thank you.
George?
Unfortunately, I too wasn't here at the last meeting, but congratulations. And,
Thank you.
But I agree, I think A is looks more natural, as far as the way the two roof lines now come together. It looks like it's been there from the beginning rather than an add-on, which I think too is, helps, the look of your house as well, is that it doesn't look like it was something that was stuck on. I mean, B is fine, but I just think A just looks like the natural way to go.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I would agree with roof line A. It lends to more of the consistency of the existing home. But I like the overall layout, and your retaining wall kind of blends in, hides that framing, or your skirt boards. But that's about it. I definitely like option A.
Lisa, do you want to go with B to be a criterion?
I know, I feel like I should.
Yeah.
No, option A, what I like about all of this is that we can still see the original home. We know what it is, it's still there. The scale of all this seems appropriate. And, option A, it was no question. You just kind of know instinctually by looking at something, and I felt like option A is the way to be. So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I could go with either A or B. I mean, I don't really have an opinion one way or another. I think the devil's gonna be in the details, or not the devil, but the details are how you work out on option A, how you work everything out, specifically how the end, I know you have a side view there and another side view, the two side views of A, specifically the end of the gable end of the porch itself, and how that all works together, I think is going to be something that you really need to look at and really focus on when you do that. And also I look at it, I look at the top of that roof, and I think you should kind of want to make sure your ledger goes up against that. And, that's an architectural detail again. So I think that something that can be solved. The only question I have is looking, and it's only for what the people that would be, I think there's a house to the, house to the right there that actually has a garage, right? And then and has a driveway, and you kind of want to look at how it comes around the backside. And it's nothing that can't be solved, but you just got to be careful. And I think that I like it up on the base. I think that helps a lot. I think that really does kind of make it ground it with the rest of the house. So is the foundation at that level of that, or is it is the foundation exposed at all in the existing house?
It is.
It is exposed,
yeah.
correct.
It is
yeah.
exposed, so are you coming off basically the line of the foundation, the exposed foundation, or are you going, if you kept it, it would be nice if you could keep the planter boxes or the planters to the level of that, if it can be done.
That's the thought, just so we.
That was your
attach-
intent?
Yeah, attach to the
Yeah,
rim
I
board.
understand that your
Yeah.
SketchUp, I assume you did this in SketchUp.
Yes.
But I assume that was the intent, and I think that is really, that's gonna make it really work together, and it'll, if you get a nice, I think it looks like a, is that a split-face block there, Michael, or is,
I believe it's concrete block, isn't it?
It's
Just regular flat face concrete block? I don't remember. I didn't look that closely when I was at the house the other day.
Which are you referring to?
The foundation
itself, is it
It's
split?
not block, no.
It's poured concrete,
It's
okay.
poured concrete?
so you might be seeing the board forming.
Yeah, yeah, I thought it looked like it had a little bit of split face on it, so, but I think that you can get something to work really well with that. And I would also want you to look at the proportions of the columns and make sure that they work with what, they look a little spindly to my eye, but it's something that you guys gotta work, that's a detail.
Yeah, and
That's
that was
not-
just our 3D.
and this is a presentation
Yeah.
that is a concept, and I
We
think.
did lay out the post. If you
Yeah.
if you actually go back to the original, we tried to look at that original opening.
Yeah,
So that's why our posts are kind of laid out to the left of the door, the right
Sure.
of the door, and at the end.
Yeah.
To kind of keep the original vision.
yeah, I think where the posts are is great, but I just the overall
Yeah.
look of them, I think you might want to look at that a little in depth and really try to get that. But, and I would also want to, there's a fascia up on top, you might, I don't know whether you want to go as far as look at how deep the fascia is on the shed dormer itself, and that might be too deep, than for the fascia for the porch. So, I just look at some of those details and I think it'll come together. Does anyone else have any comments?
Yeah, I was going to ask about the planter boxes. Is there any concern about watering the plants and how that might affect the foundation of the house or the foundation of the porch?
No, typically when we kind of do these things, and this is kind of getting into more of the details too, there could be some drain tile that's put in there in the bottom of them, and then goes out. Doing a project in Wheaton, where it's very similar, where we had to build up because public sewer went across the addition. So we're doing something very similar, where we built up block behind it and built up block in front of it to create this kind of, and we're doing drain tile in there.
I see.
So any additional moisture from rain or anything else can
Will drain
percolate
out.
out into the yard,
I see.
correct?
Okay, all right. Good, thank you.
Okay. With that, I think I appreciate you guys coming back, and I appreciate you going through the concept process, because I know that last month was not fun.
Yeah.
But
But we
hopefully-
appreciate the feedback that we received.
hopefully we can get through, and we'll see you in December, and then you can get going on their project.
Yeah.
Okay, so
All right.
just a point of clarification, you guys are good with us moving forward to go with this?
Oh, yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
I think it does, I like the idea of removability. I think that really helps with the idea of the SRI standards. So it's like, and it does, I think it fits in, but it isn't so, it's an addition, but it still fits in. So I think, and I'm on the fence on the posts themselves, whether you should have more detail on those or not, because if you have less detail, well, first of all, this is a very simple house. It should have less detail, but even a little detail might be, you might want to look at that, because you want to be able to tell that it was built in 2021, not in 1918.
Yeah, and we will, and that'll reflect
Yeah,
upon.
and that's a detail, so, but.
Or if there's gonna be a 5-minute presentation on columns, we'll come back.
Yeah, we'll come back on, Michael will give us a idea of do you have any ideas on columns, Michael?
No, I was just gonna say, if you are interested, I always have all kinds of resources, you can pick up the phone, or we can set up another meeting, I can share details galore with you.
Absolutely. We appreciate that.
Perfect.
Okay,
All right, well, thank you guys very much.
Yep, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much for
Thank you.
coming back.
Thanks for coming back, I appreciate it. Okay. Next thing on our agenda is staff updates. Michael?
Thank you, Chairman Zelmer. I just have one item to bring to the commission's attention this evening. And it's an item regarding something that's kind of vague in our review process. You know, we all have the permit matrix that identifies all the different types of work that either is administratively approved or comes before the commission. And I had a call about somebody who was interested in putting up a prefabricated carport within the historic district. And it's not something that's identified in our exact procedures and processes how this should be handled. It is an accessory structure over 100 square feet, but it's also in the rear corner of the yard, although it is visible from two right-of-ways. And just to protect the person who made the inquiry, this is a generic lot in the historic district. It's actually been modified, so it's no particular lot. It's just replicating the conditions that I was requested to look at. So what the request was, there's nothing in our ordinance, in the zoning ordinance, that wouldn't allow a prefabricated structure like this to be erected in Geneva. They're readily available at big box home improvement companies. They're typically metal construction with a light gauge tube steel posts and purlins with an embossed metal roof covering, so a fairly lightweight covering. They do not have walls, so they would be open. As I mentioned in my comments a few minutes ago, in a corner application, even though it's in the rear yard, it would be highly visible from the public right-of-ways. So again, our review matrix would suggest that any accessory structure that is visible from a public right-of-way that's more than 100 square feet would be reviewed. However, our policy has been generally, if it's in a rear yard or at the rear of a building, that we don't review it. So I'm just looking for some feedback. This particular case has been withdrawn, but since I found this anomaly in the review process, I wanted to bring it forward to you tonight to get some feedback how you would like me to handle this. If this is something you want me to bring to the commission, or if this is something that is looked at as being removable and temporary without altering the principal structure on the property and wouldn't necessarily impact in the long term the historic district appearance. So this is totally an open-ended discussion. There's no right or wrong. I just want to have some directions how I should proceed if this question comes up in the future.
So as part of the discussion, not just the carport, but just looking at this, even though it's in the rear of a property and maybe something that you can still see from the street though, right?
Correct.
Well, and we've had things come before us that we've had to review that had some sort of visibility, even though it was maybe not at the, visible from like the street view. You know, maybe it was like a rear street. What was that one home, that, I don't know, is that 7th Street that kind of curves around right there? That one right there that had like a, it had some sort of covered porch with a fireplace built in, and you can see that. I
yeah,
mean,
South-
that's visible
South-
from, and
South
then there's
Street.
the church
South
over
Street.
here
Yeah.
that had something where they were gonna put in a, some sort of rear entrance and move a tree, and that's not at the front end of a building. So I feel like that would still be something we could review. But as far as it being a temporary structure, is that part of the question as to whether we should be reviewing it or not?
Those are all parts of the question.
Okay.
Typically, again, this is, the question came up on a corner lot similar to what I've diagrammed here.
Yeah.
So their entire yard is basically visible to the street. Typically, we haven't penalized people who have 360-degree visibility to their property because that's, you know, that's more than we would do for the majority of the properties in the historic district. So, like I said, this was just kind of I mean, my gut reaction, and you know I've done this before, if I have any questions, I would normally bring it to the commission if I felt uncomfortable reviewing it administratively, if I was allowed to do that. But I just thought this was a very interesting discussion item because it's really pushed back at the furthest corner of their only private corner of their yard, yet it's still highly visible. So.
Yeah, I think visibility has always made it our business. You know, we've reviewed other things that were in the rear end of a property but visible from other streets or wherever. So I don't think that necessarily disqualifies it just because it's not at the front end of a property. So I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, on many occasions, we've had to review detached garages, and some of them in the front and some are in the back, and, you know, I mean, you know, this is just basically, a tool shed on steroids. So, I mean, those detached garages have to conform to the look of the area, the neighboring houses, and the house that it's in, and, you know, just by looking, once again, this is an example, but that house there, I mean, there's no way this thing, does anything as far as blending into the store, it belongs on a farm, not in downtown Geneva.
Yeah.
Well, it does, but if it's a removable, almost temporary structure, and it isn't connected to the existing home, I guess that would be my question. I think about, there's no reason in the code you couldn't build that, right?
Correct.
And so it,
And zoning allows in R1, in the historic district, a metal pre-engineered structure?
Well, now, that's a different question. A carport is allowed, and that's going to be the second part of my question is, then what is the expectation of the commission? Because we have nothing in our design guidelines for historic properties or anywhere in any of our other guides of what a carport should look like. When it comes to,
it could be construed a carport.
Well, yeah,
it meets the basic,
you know, that's why I asked about the definition of zoning, and, you know, the character of that is not, I don't know how you could classify that as a carport. How you could classify that as a carport, but, you know, I guess my other thought, I'm with George on this, there's also the character of the overall site and neighborhood, and, you know, it's an interesting, it's almost a legal point about this temporary structure. Although it could be construed as temporary, it could wind up there for the life of the building, or until it fell down. So, this is kind of a new but, you know, I think more is to identify, for my purposes, the character of the structure, and is that in R1 zoning for the historic, that type of building allowed?
this type of
Pre-engineered metal structure.
technically that this would be allowable.
It would be.
It meets the minimum requirements of a carport, and that's my question. So, for instance, in the design guidelines, I can pretty much tell what a garage is supposed to look like. It's, because it's got walls and a roof, it's got to have some kind of
Right.
relationship to the architecture of the building. And my head scratching on this was, this is designed to be a minimal building or structure. And so, while this meets the intent of what a carport is identified or defined as in our zoning code, I guess the question would be, what is the expectation of the commission of what a carport should be? Should it relate to the architecture of the principal structure?
Yes.
Should it,
Yeah.
So does someone have to pull a building permit in order to put this structure up? Do they have to?
Sure.
So they have
you have to
to,
know how it's anchored to the
yeah,
ground.
right. So it's not just a temporary structure at that point, if it's,
It's-
going.
It could be construed as a temporary structure and still be able to pull a permit for it,
Right.
I would think.
It's, maybe temporary is the wrong word to use. Maybe the better word is it's not impacting or not altering the historic structure. But it
But
may
if you
be,
got a
but
poor
the,
footing,
but the,
it's not
what I'm hearing
temporary.
is it's altering the character of the streetscape or the neighborhood.
Exactly.
And that's the concern. So the question I guess I'm getting at, because if this question comes up again, someone's gonna ask, what are the minimum requirements for a carport? So, what I'm kind of hearing, and I'm not trying to put words in everybody's mouth, what I'm kind of hearing is that if it's a gable or a hipped roof or what have you, whatever the roof is on the building that's associated with, it should have some resemblance to that. It should match the materials of the roof, I'm guessing. Is what
Yeah.
I'm seeing some head nodding. And then as far as structural supports, my question is this. We don't usually get into the details, say, for a gazebo, which is the closest thing to this. Somebody could put up a metal gazebo in their backyard that would
Oh.
meet
And visible from,
the street.
visible from the street. I mean, it gets to a, would we be the shed police? I shouldn't say.
That's what we would be called, yeah. The
Well, but
shed
I mean,
police.
isn't
Mike,
like
I have a
a
comment
gazebo
here.
more of an architectural element rather than a specific use? I mean,
You could say the same about a car, I mean, you could have a gazebo that probably wouldn't fit with the rest of the house.
But that would be under 100 square feet also, wouldn't it?
It doesn't necessarily. I mean,
Well,
10
you
by 10, it could
mentioned,
be.
Michael, 100 square feet. Is that the go, no-go on this?
Our design, our permit review matrix says I can approve it administratively on behalf of the commission, anything under 100 square feet. Anything over 100 square feet comes to the commission automatically.
Oh,
Automatically. It doesn't.
carport's not gonna be 10
we-
by 10.
We could still be looking at things that are under 100 square feet if you don't feel comfortable approving
Right.
them.
Yeah.
So,
But now,
you know,
if-
there's a carport over on, near Ford and Seventh. It's a wood structure, it's a carport. So my, I guess, question would be, if this was a wood structure, stick framed, and the materials match the home, is that the issue here? Because it's, but being a carpenter for 41 years, I don't like the word prefabricated. But, so if this was wood, let's just say the home was, more rustic with, say, some cedar, so would cedar post, would that carport be? I mean, I'm kind of asking versus, and not really telling. I mean, I agree with George's, a metal structure just would not lend well to the neighborhood.
Okay.
But would it be,
It's
if it was a wood
character
structure,
again. It
is
goes
that
to-
different? Like what you had said, Mike, if it lends to the home with the roof pitch and the materials? Is that what we're kind of discussing?
That's what I'm trying to get at, because I want to be prepared the next time somebody comes forward and says, I would like to build a carport, what is the commission looking for? And we haven't had this discussion in the 9 years I've been here, so.
well, I think the primary thing is that it needs to mimic and blend with the primary structure on the property, which therefore would make it blend in with the rest of the neighborhood. I'm not necessarily against a pre-engineered metal structure because it's used in all kinds of construction, and a lot of the metal work in that could be covered up with appropriate materials that it would mimic the house of the residents and such. It's just the skeleton, it's just the bones of it. But if it was something like, like that tractor shed up there, no, I don't think so.
Okay, I'm confused. Are we talking about a structure that is 10 feet by 10 feet?
No, this structure, it was proposed to be 18 by 22.
18 by 22, okay, all right.
But even if it were 10 feet by 10 feet, we could still have something to say about it.
Oh.
If it were visible from the right of way, right?
Yes.
Right, I mean, if somebody came in, with this, I would be bringing this to the commission.
Correct.
And no matter what size it was. But again, I'm trying to, as you all know, I try to prepare applicants of what the expectations are of the commission before they come forward, so it's not a wasted meeting, as much as possible. So, I have personal feelings, but again, my job is to represent what the commission is looking for, and that's why I brought this forward, to kind of get some feedback. Whether you come to a consensus tonight is not necessarily the goal for me, but I did want to hear what the commission's reaction was to what a carport should be, so I can, again, direct a future applicant if it comes forward again to say, no, I don't think this is going to pass, so you might as well be looking at X, Y, and Z.
Well, but it could come again.
Pardon?
Can
could
I
come again.
continue? I'd like to continue, please. Michael, if someone came to you, okay, does a structure that children play on for climbing and having swings on and all that sort of swing set, if that's bigger than 10 by 10, or does that have to have a permit?
I don't believe that play equipment requires a permit.
Okay,
Now,
okay, but
if
look,
it be-
but look
if
at,
it-
look,
If it ended up at the building commissioner's viewpoint that it involved decks.
which some play equipment does.
Then I believe that he would require a plan if it got that large, it had walking surfaces and things like that. But just a play area in general, no, I don't think we require a permit, or it would come before this commission to review.
Okay, so it's okay for people to put that in the front yard?
No, there are zoning requirements that has to either be in a side yard or a rear yard.
Okay, well, how about if these people wanted to put a piece of play equipment right there? Would that be coming to us because it
No.
is viewable?
And that's one reason, again, that, as I said in my opening remarks, it's in the far rear corner. If this was in the, proposed in a street yard or adjacent to the street yard and close to the street, I would definitely be bringing it to you. But again, it's pushed all the way back to the farthest rear corner.
Okay. Okay, I myself think that we should keep our nose out of the carport business. I think, I think we don't want to become the carport police. I don't want to become the shed police in town. These are all pieces, these are all pieces of equipment that have nothing to do with the house. They are readily viewable from the street, this is true, but I look at all of this as being very temporary. And I don't think we need to discuss the size, how it looks with the house. I don't think we need to do this at all. This is just my opinion, and it looks to me like everybody's shaking their head as they're listening to me, so I may be the only one who feels this way. But I think that we have lots of projects that people come to us, and we do our very best to make sure that that is the best for that historic piece of property. And I don't think carports are something that we need to be concerned with. That's just me.
Michael, has a carport been approved by the Historic Commission in the past?
Not since I've been here.
Okay.
That's why, again, I am bringing this forward. It's not identified in the design guidelines, or I've not dealt with this kind of case yet.
If I may, I think the first place to start is a stronger definition of what a carport is. Because we've kicked around shed and whatever in specific terms. If we're going to exclude or include something, carport apparently to different people means different things. Secondly, in terms of precedent, I remember the house we reviewed in depth over by the library, right across where they were going to subdivide that property. There was a shed in the back. It was alleged to be a garage, but we used the term shed interchangeably with it. And we did have significant debate and discussion regarding that, particularly when they wanted to move it. So terminology here, I think, is very important. And, to many people, a carport's a garage without walls. To others, it could be something else. But I think that would be, from my perspective, where I'd like to start. But I still think that the because of the character of the area, the neighborhood, and of the whole site, a structure that is rather sizable can't be excluded from our purview.
I concur with George that maybe a more defined definition of what a carport is. And Caroline, I don't want to be part of the shed police either. But when you're talking a structure that's 18 by 22, that's not a shed. Okay, that's a big structure. And if it's made big enough to put in a car, okay, that's something of significance. And, I go back to the point, I mean, we've had a lot of detached garages where we had the owners make sure that it mimicked the style and the look of the primary residence with windows, with siding and things of that nature, and that's where they store their vehicles. A carport is no different. It's where they store their vehicles. So why wouldn't we have a person who has a detached garage follow a similar standard as to somebody with a carport?
And from my point of view, a garage is a permanent structure, a carport is not. Even though perhaps carports have to be firmly anchored to the ground. It's just this is just my point of view.
Again, I think that we should not focus on permanency or temporarily, temporarily in this, whatever. I think the question is, from our commission's standpoint, is it impacting the historic character of the property or the historic principal structure?
Right.
So, I mean, that's the reason why we review gazebos or pergolas or what have you, is to make sure that the character of the property is
Right.
being kept intact, or the character of the neighborhood. And as I said, most of the examples that have been referenced already tonight of previous examples, the accessory structure was moved as close to the street yard as possible. And like the one that scratched my head a little bit is that this one is pushed as far back on the property as possible, and yet it's highly visible. So what I'm getting is, again, I don't think the definition in the zoning ordinance needs to be rewritten. It says a carport is an open air structure for storing vehicles or something to that effect. I didn't pull that up yet. But I think the question is, just like all of the things that the commission deals with here, is it's not the definition of what the function or the use of something is, it's what the aesthetics are in relationship to the surrounding structures and on the property and adjacent properties. So what I'm hearing is that from the majority, and again, I just want to have some kind of direction to talk with somebody if this comes up again, that a light gauge metal structure for the majority of the commission, it seems, is not appropriate. And that it should be something more substantial and complementary in material and design to the principal structure, regardless of where it's located, if it's visible from the street. Is that kind of the
Yes.
overall consensus?
Well, one last thought, though, I always thought a carport was attached to a house based on suburbia back in the 50s and the original carport model. I've never heard of a detached carport.
That's an interesting point that you bring up, George, because that is the one discrepancy we did find in the zoning ordinance as it's been updated over the years. The definition says an attached structure to a principal building, principal structure. In the zoning code where it says that's allowable as an accessory structure, it says attached or detached. So there is a little conflict there in the zoning ordinance that can be addressed by the planning
Yeah.
division. But again, from our standpoint, like I said, it's not identified in the design guidelines. And I just wanted to get a little bit of feedback and clarification. Didn't really want to beat the horse to death. But I just wanted to see where the commission was, because this kind of took me off guard when we'd been talking about a carport, and this is what was emailed to me. And I was not thinking of this as a carport, but it does meet the minimum requirements of our definition.
You know, one thing too, just, you know, well, we gotta also be careful about setting precedent, because, you know, even though, you know, as was stated, this would have been tucked way back in the corner of the lot where, you know, it's probably whatever. Once something like this were to go up, then the next person who comes in and he wants to put it 20 feet closer to the street, where do we stand? Well, you let him do it. I'm doing the same thing. Actually, instead of you know, I got a green roof on mine instead of a galvanized roof. I'm just moving it 20 feet. Now, where do we go? I mean, so the thing is that, you know, regardless of the location, you know, is not a factor in here, because once we put it and we gavel it that it's okay, then the next person can say, well, we're gonna put it here instead and put it there and such, but.
And I think that if we begin to look at these kinds of what I would call portable structures, I think we're opening Pandora's box. I think we're going to end up in some sort of situation that we cannot dig ourselves out of. I think this is a mistake. But this is just, as I'm saying, this is my point of view.
But, you know, theoretically, anything is portable. I mean, how many times in some of these older houses have we seen, well, it was relocated from this street over to that street?
Yeah.
So the thing is that anything can be moved.
Well, that's true, but does everybody think of bits of houses as being portable? I don't think so.
I can move a whole house.
Yeah, we move them a lot.
True. Is that portable, though?
No,
No, but
yeah.
if this thing is going up with footings and other things in the ground and a concrete pad and that kind of stuff, that's not portable either. I get it. It's less complicated to build, but it's still technically not portable. You can disassemble it. It's a giant erector set.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I tend to fall on your side, Carolyn, that I think that but I can see both sides of this argument. I think that I wonder about the disassembly type of thing, but I guess if we can talk about character of the existing home and a new home in the historic district, we can talk about character of any accessory structure of that house. And I think that's where is that kind of the,
Well,
I mean,
I think the whole discussion has been helpful for me as staff, because
Sure.
one of my goals for this next year also, one of the things I've been asked to do is to review our design guidelines to find where the weaknesses are. And so this actually came at a very good time to help identify some of those issues. So in my recommendations of where the design guidelines should be strengthened, depending on where that goes, I could certainly address carports or accessory structures. I'd rather look at not just carports, but accessory structures.
yeah,
Like I said, I didn't expect a consensus or a specific answer. I wanted to hear what the different points of view were, and watching the different nonverbal cues from everybody to kind of get an idea of what I should be thinking about as I approach the revisions to the design guidelines. So, like I said, this was just something that kind of came up out of the blue. I did not expect this particular solution to come across my email when we'd been talking about a carport. This isn't what I had envisioned, but it did meet the minimum requirements of a carport in Geneva. So I wanted to get a sense of what the commission's opinions were. I think I've got a pretty good sense of that. And like I said, if I do make suggestions to the revisions to the design guidelines, I will certainly be bringing those forward to the commission for full discussion at that time. So I appreciate your willing to, give me some feedback on this so I can approach this appropriately in the future.
Michael, I would appreciate if you would call Springfield and discuss this with the gentleman who is our historic preservation person in Springfield in that office. Because there must be other people in the state that are discussing this sort of situation.
I will speak to people at the SHPO. I have a feeling they're going to say that unless it's a tax credit project, it's really up to the local commission to make that determination what's appropriate for the community. But I will talk to them and take that into consideration as well.
Who is the person that's there now?
Well, the person who reviews the majority of the tax assessment freeze projects is Darius Brica. But I would open this up to all 4 reviewers at the SHPO and kind of get their feedback and their experience in other communities.
Okay, yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, is that it for the staff updates?
Yes, that's it for the
Okay, very good. Next, we have new business from the commission. Any new business? Any new business from the public?
I have a few comments I'd like to make, if you don't mind.
If you could step up to the rostrum. And get your name and address also.
Yeah, so, well, my name is Al Watts. I'm a Community Engagement Director for the Preservation Partners of the Fox Valley. So I was here a month ago and talked to you guys just briefly to remind you, we champion a sense of place for Geneva, St. Charles, and Batavia. And we offer heritage education and promote appreciation of the Fox Valley's rich architectural and historic structures. We operate 5 historic properties and are a voice for preservation in the Tri-Cities area. What one of my responsibilities is to go around and kind of try to get a sense of what the communities would like from us, and we're a nonprofit, so I explained to you what we do, but I also want to know what you guys could benefit from what we do and what we can do. I've talked to the Geneva City Council, I've talked to the St. Charles Historic Preservation Commission, and so I'm gonna throw at you guys a couple of things that they've given us feedback on, and then get your feedback as well. So a couple of things that that I've heard talk about what we can do is to educate the community about the benefits of historic preservation. Like, for example, that historic districts tend to have higher property values than non-historic districts, because I understand there's a lot of misinformation about what a historic district does and what it doesn't do. So, educating on that is something. Also related to that is dispelling myths about what you guys do and what you don't do, what you approve and what you don't approve. I don't want to get into the details with people about it, but I've heard a lot of things about, for example, people will say, well, this is my property, I should be allowed to do whatever I want. And the fact of the matter is that that's never been the case, no matter where you live, unless you live in the middle of nowhere, in a shed with, Ted Kaczynski or something. You have to, get permits approved and things like that. And a historic commission, sometimes you have to go through maybe one extra step. And the reasons for that and why that is, educating the public about that, I think is something that would be beneficial. That's what people have told us. Also educating the public about tax benefits for their historic homes, because there are some nice tax benefits. There's got to go through a couple of loopholes with the state to do it. There's also some tax benefits that the federal government offers for developers and things like that. From my understanding from other people is that there's not a lot of people that are completely aware of that. So those are things that we can do. Another big thing that's come to our attention is about windows. I get a lot of comments about windows that, we should, the old windows are no good and they're terrible. We should just rip them all out and put new ones. Why does the Historic Commission not want us to do that? And there's a lot of misinformation about that we'd like to educate the public about. And one thing specifically I wanted to ask you guys about, and I may have already got the answer, is it sounds like residents can come in front of you and do a concept review. And my understanding is that's a fairly, can be a fairly regular thing. My question really is, how much of that do you want to receive? In other words, we can put it out on social media as one of the things that we educate people about, is that they can come in front of the commission and do a concept review before they, get deep into spending money with architects and stuff like that. Michael's a great resource, so, I mean, my first thing would always be to talk to Michael, but, is that something that, you'd be interested in having us do, is, throw a post on Facebook sometime and say, hey, if you're looking at changing something to your historic home, you should go before the commission. So that's my question for you. And then the second one is, what other kind of ideas can we do and educate the public on?
I think it would be great to inform the public about the resource that Michael is in the historic district, and I think that also that the concept review of something is it's always, I think there are some architects out there, I think of Sean Gallagher, usually goes through the concept design process and gives us a heads up of what he's thinking about, and I think that's always helpful because it makes going through the permit process, I think, more, you know what to expect, so.
Yeah.
I think,
And I'd like to add to that, I think that if a family comes, or a person comes to us before they have actually gone through all of the choices and decisions that they've had to make to apply for a permit, and have all of the design work done and all of the paperwork done, and then they come to us and they find out that, no, this isn't going to work because for various reasons, they have to make some changes. I think that hurts feelings and it makes people upset. And if they come before they're at a concept, they haven't set their heart on some feature of their project because they haven't looked at it and worked with it and lived with it for so long.
Right.
So I think that's a great thing for people to do the concepts before they come to us for permits.
I agree. I mean, Jeremy and Melinda's situation is a perfect example. I was here last month, and they had I could tell they really loved the idea that they had.
They did.
And they were disappointed that they couldn't do it that way.
Right.
And now they've come back to you, and I think you guys really liked what they come up with this time.
Yeah.
So my question with that, though, is that I don't know how the public nonprofit world works. I mean, I don't want to, put out a bunch of, messages on social media and have, hundreds of people coming in here. I don't think that's going to happen. But, I just want to make sure that wherever we communicate is going to be acceptable to the commission. Are you following what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's something I can talk to Michael more about in more depth. He probably can help me with that.
Mm-hmm. So in other words, you don't want us to have 15 projects every time we have a meeting.
Well, I'm guessing you don't want that.
Because
right.
Everybody wants us to design their project for them.
Right, yes.
Well, we don't want that. They don't want that. Michael doesn't want that.
Right.
We don't want that.
That's what I'm getting at. You're exactly right. That's exactly my concern. Is I want people to do that, but I also don't want to just come in and say, I have this house, I want it to be different. Tell me what to do. That's
Right.
not what you want either.
No.
And we can't do that either.
Right.
From a staff perspective, I would say I think one of the things that would benefit this commission and that a outside agency can do is I think identifying what the different processes are in the area you cover from one municipality to another. That I think that probably by having preservation in your name, people probably check that out. And I think if there's a comparative list of what the process is like from one community to the other, it would not be misinterpreted, because I do hear from some applicants, well, in such and such a town, it's this process, and I don't understand your process or why you're doing this. The other thing I would say that even though we do promote this on our own city webpage, I think any way that you can, any organization, whether it's individuals talking or your organization, directing people to the property rehabilitation page we've developed on the website, it gives a lot of good information there, and probably 60 to 70% of the people I speak to have never looked at that before they contact me.
Okay.
So I think that would be very beneficial to both applicants and the commission.
So I could almost like just basically, on the social media or and whatever, just share, you want information, go here. And just be as simple as that. That would be helpful to you.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to know. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and it might be that you do that for each community that you
Yes,
serve, because then
right.
you're kind of like the clearinghouse for the valley.
Yeah.
Yep, yep. We get all kinds of weird questions you'd be surprised, well, you probably wouldn't be surprised.
I think windows is a big problem. In the 12 years that I've been on this commission, there have been so many times where we have talked with people about not replacing the windows, but repairing windows. And what we have run into just about every time is that there is this list of people that I know Michael has, of people who have said that they will gleefully repair windows, but then when people call them, they're either so busy or they're no longer interested. It would be wonderful if you could put together a list of people. There's got to be carpenters in town, in these towns, anywhere in Kane County, who are interested in renovating historic windows.
You make a great point, because that's almost exactly word for word what St. Charles asked us to do. And I'll tell you, the challenge with that is, there's a big challenge with that we have to try to figure out if we can do, because it's a matter of, it's not a matter of necessarily vetting people, it's finding them and then continuing to make sure that they're still in business and they're still doing it.
Yes.
And that's a maintenance issue on our end, and being able to have staff to do that. I've got some ideas on how to fix that issue, so I'm working on it.
Okay.
So, but thank you.
In response to that, we do annually, every August, I have our intern update our list, so he does go through our list, or she, and calls everybody on our list to make sure they're still interested, make sure their parameters haven't changed, make sure they're still in business.
Right.
And we do add people almost every year. We hear from people who say, hey, I hear you've got a list, and so we do update that on every August.
Do you have that, is that published somewhere, or is that just you?
It's on the property rehabilitation page.
I have not been there either, so I'm just as bad as everybody else, right? So I'm going to take a look at that.
And how do we find this page?
If you go on the city webpage and you look at you either search property rehabilitation or you look up preservation, it will get you to the preservation pages on the city website, and it'll be on your left side of the little directory. They'll say property rehabilitation page. But you can actually search it in the search bar right from the main page.
And that may even give us a starting point for creating a list for the whole Tri-Cities. So I'll take a look. That's one more idea to add to what I'm working on with that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I would add one more thing to your list. Is, it would probably be very good. I coordinated one. It's been 4 years ago. We did the workshop that we invited all the fellow commissions in, and we had the one day workshop here from the camp workshop. But I think that if there are opportunities for, whether it's a preservation workshop on windows or a preservation workshop on real estate agents or what have you, I think if there's a way to coordinate that between the various people in the various communities, staff people who are doing preservation or full-time like me, it would be helpful. I mean, it literally is a function of hours that I don't have the time to plan for a region. I have enough to do day to day, but if there was interest amongst other communities to do a regional workshop on windows or on tax incentives or on a real estate training course, or even if it's got continuing education tied to it.
Or siding.
Or siding, any of those issues, a kids building fair, a kids preservation fair, any of those things. I don't think there's anybody who has a luxury of all the time to do that in any one of the cities in this region. And so I don't think it gets done, and that is probably one of the best outreaches that could be accomplished. But I know that I could contribute sometime, or we could probably apply for CLG grants if we had some programming. But quite honestly, just the day-to-day and the projects I have ahead of me keep me too busy to try to coordinate something on a regional level. And again, I think when you're trying to bring in a speaker or whatever, we don't have the budget here at Geneva on our own to afford to bring in a speaker on a specific topic, but probably pooling resources would allow that.
Yeah, in fact, actually, the Kids Preservation Fair that you mentioned, Batavia does a preservation week. I believe it's the last week of April, I think. And we're trying to put together a program specifically for that, for kids to, do a little bit of preservation stuff with masonry or windows, probably not windows, but something like that. We haven't got it fully developed, but that's an idea, so we're on the same page with that too. But that, a regional thing, I know that we've done some stuff like that in the past. I mean, I'm only 3 months on the job, so, but all that stuff is really good stuff to know, so it's on my list. Any other ideas anybody has? All right, I got one more thing for you. I'm going to pass this out if you don't mind. We have an event coming up this winter. It's called Winter Lights, and it's going to be the Japanese garden, the Fabian Japanese Gardens.
Right.
And so we just our promotion this week, and we have a couple other events also that are going on in St. Charles. So I'm just going to pass these out. Just you guys can try to come visit us. Thank you. Only $5 to come see the lights, and I just got them finished installed. I was just there before here, and
Thank
they
you.
were fantastic. So you don't want to miss it.
All right, that would be lovely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any, with that, I think if we can get a motion to adjourn? And a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No, we are adjourned.